Now, in May, Charlie Kirk was in San Francisco. He was at San Francisco State as part of his American Comeback Tour. That's where he was there in Utah. He was visiting colleges all across the country. And KRON 4's Rob Nesbitt was there when Kirk came to San Francisco. He's going to continue our coverage now from the newsroom. And we wanted to hear from you, Rob, since we're seeing all this video of what this event is like at that college campus in Utah. Was it similar to what you saw at San Francisco State?
Very similar, Justine. Charlie Kirk, he was making stops at different colleges. He came to SF State, and if you're wondering who he basically was a very political person who tried to drum up folks to get support of the Republican Party. When he does these events at college campuses, what he would do is he would be under his tent, an awning that said, "Prove me wrong." He wanted folks to come up to the microphone and debate with him, ask him questions. That's exactly what he did at SF State, and it's what he did today in Utah. The exact same setting, and it gets very heated. People go up, and there's a mix of people who support him, and there are a mix of people who are against him. And so they go up to the microphone and they talk about things such as abortion, Trump, trans people in sports, and there's a real heated debate that goes back and forth. And then Kirk would post the videos of the debates on his social media. Has a huge following. If you go to TikTok, he has more than 3 million followers. You go to Instagram, millions more. So a lot of people paid attention. He was very popular, especially among young men, Justine.
Now is when he was here in San Francisco. That's not video from Utah. The video that we're looking at now is from when he was in San Francisco. And I'm sort of struck by how open it is, how public it is. We see some security guards there, but Kirk is just sitting there, and he really wants to engage there with the people that are coming probably for and against him as part of this Prove Me Wrong. And he's just sitting under that tent. Did you notice any security when you were there? Can you describe the atmosphere of what that was like?
It actually surprised me, Justine, how there were only 4 people, 4 to 5, I would say, that get set up right around the tent where he speaks. When I looked at the videos in Utah, it was the same thing that I saw at SF State, where there are 4 men in black shirts that are his own security guards to protect him if people might rush the stage or try to approach him. But for the most part, at SF State, there were campus security that were at entrances. That's the video that you're seeing now of him speaking at SF State. So there were college security as well as SF police that were kind of on site. But what I'm hearing from eyewitnesses that were in Utah was that was not the case, that people noticed how there was a lack of campus security. And another thing that I was struck by was in Utah, the same thing as SF State, an outdoor setting with several vantage points. So it's not an indoor coliseum or an indoor auditorium where you don't have access if you don't have a ticket. Essentially, at SF State, you could see the fence there. If you didn't have a ticket to get in, you could stand at the perimeter, see, hear. It was kind of an athletic field from what you can notice now where the folks gathered. And it looked like in Utah, from what I saw from videos, it was another outdoor setting, several windows, balconies, vantage points. A lot of the videos that are being posted on social media of the event in Utah actually are from those upper balconies where essentially anyone could go, Justine, and see this event for themselves.
So you do need some sort of ticket to get into this event. And while you were there, did you notice protesters? Could you tell if there are more people that were there for or against him?
So tickets, to answer that question, yes. And at SF State, it was a ticketed event. I went in as a reporter in the same line that students or the public went into. I was struck by how most of the organizers at the entrances and people that were controlling the crowds coming in and out were clearly college students. So that was kind of concerning of how young they were. But you did need a ticket to get in, and they were not allowing bags at SF State for his event here. You actually had to check a bag. You couldn't take it inside. Eyewitnesses talking in Utah have said that they noticed no metal detectors, and that no one even checked to see if they had a ticket or not. So they were able, it sounds like, to walk right into the event that happened today.
And you mentioned there was some security there, but that was right in front of Kirk as he's under this tent. That's sort of to protect him from people who may try to, physically approach him from an arm's distance. You didn't notice security like snipers on top of buildings or anything like that.
No snipers to that point, but police officers were at entrances and exits at SF State so that you couldn't kind of come and go or try to get into an exit if you didn't have a ticket.
Can you describe like the demographics of the crowd at all? I know it's on a college campus, so maybe it's skewing a little bit younger, but what were these people like?
Yes, it was a younger crowd. Kirk was very popular among young men, specifically Republicans. They kind of loved the debate style that he had. Everyone had a cell phone up to kind of have their own moments, see, you know, if they could catch a viral video for themselves. So definitely a younger crowd that shows up to support him. And also, from what you can see there were younger crowds in the perimeters that were beating drums, playing loud music, disruptors, people who were protesting him being on campus.
Well, Rob, we're glad that you could join us here to provide some perspective on our breaking news today. Appreciate your time.